Hey everyone, thanks for joining in this session. It's top of the hour and we can get started. Um, Thank you so much for joining. Uh, my name is Vaibhav Gujral. I'm going to talk today on Azure role-based certifications. Before we jump onto the content, wanted to introduce myself. As I said, my name is Vaibhav Gujral. I work as a cloud architect at Kivit. I am based out of Omaha, Nebraska in Midwest US. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. I hold numerous Azure certifications. I run a Azure user group here in Omaha. If you are interested in learning more about that group, please visit the website omahaazure.org. I'm a regular speaker at different user groups, events, and conferences. I regularly blog on vaibhavgujral.com. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so through my Twitter handle or through LinkedIn. With that, let's get started. This is a very introductory session on Azure role-based certifications, where I'm going to touch upon different role-based certification paths and the different exams that are included under each of those certification paths. I'll talk about how you can register for exam, what are the different delivery options. I'll talk about exam structures, scoring, and how you can generate your badges, certificates, and transcripts. As you have seen in the last slide in my introduction, I did said I have earned numerous Azure role-based certifications in the past. So I'll share some do's and don'ts, some tips, some learning resources, which I hope will be helpful for you if you are preparing for your role-based certifications. Setting the expectations right, we will not touch on a specific certification exam in depth, but we will be touching on different certification paths at a 50,000 view level, just to give an idea about the different certification paths available, so that it can help you in making a right decision of which certification is right for you. And the intent is to provide motivation and resources so that you can get started with your preparation for Azure certifications. If you need any guidance on your certification preparation, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I will be more than happy to help you. So if you have given Azure certifications in the past, you will remember there used to be different certifications like MCSE, MCSA, MCSD. Those were the old days when all these certifications were industry standards, but now most of those stand retired, and all the Azure related certifications that used to exist back then are not relevant anymore because
at Windsor Castle, Prince Edward arrived to join the Queen in the family's mourning as officials.
all the certifications that were related to Azure under MCSC, MCSA are now retired, as most of them are not relevant. The only advantage I saw of those certifications were those were never expiring certifications. Once you earn them and they never expire. But as you know, Azure, like any other public cloud, has grown immensely since it was announced back in late 2000s. So it was not possible for or practical for someone to have these never expiring certifications. So what Microsoft did, they came up with a concept for role-based certification exams, which they can keep updating. So they announced Microsoft Specialist certifications for Azure roles. Back in 2013, 2014, Microsoft launched three different tracks for these certifications, one for developers, one for administrators, and one for architects. For developers, if you might know, the exam number was 7532. For administrators, it was 7533. For architects, it was 7534, and which was later updated to 7535. But all these three exams are now retired and replaced by the new role-based certifications, which are the current certifications that you can go for. Before we jump onto those, you might ask, there are few other 70 exams, starting with the 70 number, like 7486, 7487, which had some content related to Azure in those exams. So most of those exams that I'm aware of were expired as of January 31st of this year. I have provided a link down below. So if you are interested in finding out which certification exams have expired, please check out that link down below. Before we jump on to different Azure role-based certifications, it is important to have a look at the Azure ecosystem, how big it has become, and what's the need for different role-based certifications. As you can see on top of the data center physical infrastructure that Microsoft manages, there are different set of services. There are infrastructure services, which include the core compute, storage, and networking services. Then towards the left, you have different management services that you can consume to manage your Azure ecosystem, Azure environment. Towards the right are all the security related services that you can utilize to improve your security posture in your Azure environment. And then within platform services, as you can see, there are different set of services for IoT, for artificial intelligence, for data services, for web and for hosting web and mobile services. And there are different services for DevOps and whatnot. So, and this list is just an example of the overall ecosystem and is by no means include everything out there in Azure. And the list has been growing extensively. So now, as you can imagine, for it's not practically possible for a single person to know each and every service out there in Azure. There are different roles which have come up in last few years. I have seen developers who are focused primarily on web and mobile services. I have seen AI engineers coming up. I have seen data engineers, data scientists who consume data services. I've seen administrators who manage the underlying infrastructure services, compute, storage, and networking. I've seen security engineers who have evolved to support all the security services in Azure. So it was, I think, a good move by Microsoft when Microsoft came up with the new role-based certification paths. As you can see, I have just tried to get a glimpse of a few of the roles that exist today. It starts with the Azure Fundamentals, which is for anyone who are just getting started with their Azure experience. But then as you move on, there are different kind of roles that have been identified. There are plain Azure administrators who manage compute, storage, and networking. Then there are Azure database administrators who manage the Azure databases. Then likewise, there are, as I was saying, there are different roles which Microsoft has identified, ranging from developer to data scientist to solutions architect. On top of those, Microsoft has also announced different specialty certification paths for cases like IoT, running SAP workloads in Azure, and most recently, virtual desktops. So we'll talk about some of these certifications, touch upon those in next few slides, but be take a note that uh, most of these certifications come with an expiry date of 2 years today. But starting June 2021, the expiry will be reduced to 1 year for any new certifications. But starting February of this year, Microsoft has announced that new workflow for getting your certifications renewed after they expire. So you can renew your certification after 1 year by taking a free Microsoft Learn assessment, which is kind of cool because it helps people who are working in Azure to stay certified and stay relevant. Feel free to ask me any questions in between if you have, or you can also post questions in the chat and I will love to answer them. So as I was showing, if you will notice in the last slide, these are the different badges for the different role-based certifications. There were for fundamentals, it comes with a single star. Then for most of these, it comes with a couple of stars. Then for some, it had 3 stars. And as you can see, this one is fundamental, then associate, and then expert. These are nothing but different levels of certifications that Microsoft has identified. It starts with fundamental, going to associate, expert, and then specialty. As indicated in the last slide, fundamental certifications are ideal for people who are just beginning with their experience in Azure or the related technology in Azure, or people who are looking for career change. The people don't need to have to be from technical background to take fundamental certifications. The next level is associate. The general expectation for associates is that at least they have 2 years of working experience in the related technology and services. Experts uh, are someone experts are someone who are expected to have 2 to 5 years of deep technical experience in the underlying technology and services. And then specialty covers the experience in specialized services like Internet of Things or SAP, in running SAP workloads in Azure, and so on. If I have to give you a glimpse of the overall certification paths, this is how it looks like. If you are just starting with Azure, AZ 900 is a good way to get started with your certifications. Remember that it's an optional certification and it's not a prerequisite for any of the associate, expert, or specialty certifications. Sorry. But as I said, if you are starting with Azure, regardless of if you come from technical background or not, a good way to start with learning Azure is to go with Microsoft Azure Certified Azure Fundamentals exam, which is AZ 900. If you already have past experience, you can probably map your past experience to one of these certifications. There is, as I was showing earlier, there are different associate exams starting from AZ 104, which is for administrators. AZ 204 is for developers. AZ 500 is for security engineers. AZ 600 is for the uh, people who manage Azure Stack Hub implementations for their organizations or for their customers. There are a couple of expert certifications. One is Azure DevOps Engineer Expert and one is Azure Architect Expert. Azure DevOps Engineer Experts require AZ 400 exam to be cleared, whereas Azure Architect Expert requires you to clear a couple of exams, AZ 303 and AZ 304. And as I've mentioned earlier as well, there are a couple of certification exams under specialty, AZ 220 and AZ 120. AZ 220 is for IoT developers and AZ 120 are for people who have experience in implementation of SAP workloads in Azure. Then there are specific certifications, certifications which are specific to data engineers, data scientists. Similar to Azure Fundamentals, there are a couple of fundamentals exam, DP 900 and AI 900. If you don't have past experience with Azure Data Services or Azure AI Services. You can start with DP 900. Oops. DP 900 or AI 900 exams to earn your Azure Data Fundamentals or Azure AI Fundamentals certification exams. Again, these are optional exams and are not prerequisites for any of the associate, expert, or specialty exam. Now, under associate exams, there are four different roles that have been identified. One is data engineer, data scientist, database administrator, and AI engineer. Except of data engineer associate certification, rest of the certifications require you to earn one certification exam. Data scientist requires you to earn DP 100, which covers all the data science services. Then you have database administrators exam, which covers administration of relational databases in Azure. And the AI engineer exam covers the AI solutions like cognitive services and etc. in the exam. Under the data engineer associate exam, there are two exams, DP200, DP201, which primarily covers the different data services, data platform services that are included in Azure ecosystem. Uh, Going forward, DP200 and DP201 will be replaced by an exam called DP203, which will merge the content for those two exams. So you will be required to earn just clear a single exam to earn this particular certification. And as you will notice, for AI engineer exam, the exam certification, the exam used to be AI 100, which has been updated to AI 102 recently. But but if you have already registered for the older exams, you can still appear for those older exams till June 30th. And again, this expert hasn't changed. This is from the last slide as well. There is an Azure Architect Expert exam. If you are coming from data services background, you can always go for Azure Solutions Architect certification under the expert track. And then there is a new specialty certification being announced for configuring Windows virtual desktops in Azure. The exam number is AZ140. Let's talk about these certifications a little more. So, as there are three more main fundamental certifications under the fundamentals track, as we just touched. One is Azure Fundamentals, Azure AI Fundamentals, Azure Data Fundamentals. So what's the difference between the three? For the Azure Fundamentals exam, it's intended for candidates who are just beginning with cloud-based solutions and services or are completely new to Azure. They must know different cloud concepts. I mean, the expectation if you want to earn this certification is you should know the different cloud concepts, different core Azure services, and the different security, governance, and compliance features. You don't need to have hands-on experience or you don't need to know everything in depth, but you should have a fair idea of different concepts and different options that are available in Azure. Whereas Azure AI Fundamentals is intended for candidates who have foundational knowledge of machine learning and artificial intelligence and some of the related services that are offered by Microsoft in that space. Again, you don't need to have hands-on experience, but you should understand or you should have a fair idea on which service is consumed, which service can be used for which purpose. The last one in the track is Azure Data Fundamentals, which is for candidates who are beginning to work with data services in cloud. Candidates must know core data concepts, should be familiar with relational and non-relational databases, and different types of data workloads that you can run in Azure. And again, you don't need hands-on experience to earn this certification, but you should be clear in your fundamentals. You should understand the concepts. Uh, Oops. You can go and check out the link that I have provided here to find out the ever-growing list of fundamentals exams. Now, these are optional exams, as I was mentioning in the earlier slide as well, and are not a prerequisite for any other Azure role-based certification. So if you already have some experience in Azure, you don't have to go through. If you are not interested, you can directly go for associate or expert certifications. Speaking of associate certifications, these are the different certifications that are available today under associate track. Starting with the Azure Administrator, as I was mentioning, it's intended for Azure administrators who implement, monitor, and manage Azure environments. It does cover skills which are related to an administrator role. It covers services like identities. How do you manage identities in Azure? How do you manage storage? How do you deploy and manage your compute services like virtual machines? How do you configure and manage your virtual networks? How do you manage your networking between your resources? And lastly, how do you monitor and back up your Azure resources? I have provided a link down below there you can check out, and there Microsoft does provides each and does provides a PDF which includes detailed services, detailed concepts that are included under each of these skills that are measured in these exams. So if you are an administrator, or if you had past experience with administration, or if you are interested in this domain, I would strongly encourage you to go and check out this exam. Another administrator role that is present there is called as Azure Database Administrator. As the name suggests, it's for someone who implements and manages the data solutions or relational databases in Azure. So the exam number is DP300. It primarily covers managing SQL Server, SQL databases, and other data services in Azure. I have listed down the different skills measured there, and it does cover how do you manage your databases, how do you optimize your queries, how do you implement high availability and disaster recovery for your databases, how do you administer your databases using T-SQL, how do you secure your databases, and so on. Again, I have provided a link down below. You can go there and download the detailed list of concepts that are covered under each of these skills measured. So if you have been a DBA in the past, or if you are interested in being a DBA and manage databases hosted in Azure, this is an exam for you. If you have been a developer in the past, or if you want to be a developer using or building applications on top of services offered by Microsoft Azure, then this is an exam for you. The skills that the exam measures include how do you consume some of the compute services to run your applications? How do you consume Azure storage in your applications? How do you make your application secure when you are running them in Azure? How do you monitor, troubleshoot, and optimize your Azure solutions which are hosting your applications? And lastly, how do you connect and consume those Azure services and connect them to third-party solutions that you might have in your overall architecture? I have provided the link down below for Azure Developer Certification as well. If you are a developer interested in earning this certification, this is one for you. Likewise, for people who come from InfoSec background or from security background, this is a certification for you. This is intended for security engineers who implement security controls like threat protection, identity management, and so on. It measures different skills which are related to the different security services available in Azure ecosystem. Like how do you encrypt your data? How do you encrypt your data at rest? How do you encrypt your data at transit? How do you secure your identities? How do you manage your identities? How do you protect your services running in Azure from external threats? How do you uh, protect your applications from distributed denial of attacks, denial of services attacks, and on similar lines? So check out the link I have provided there. And the exam number is AZ500. If you come from InfoSec background, this is an exam for you. Don't get it confused with the new security exams that Microsoft has launched recently. I have not covered these in depth yet as these exams are still in beta, but if you come from InfoSec background, you should also check out these exams. Microsoft has launched different track for security professionals, starting with the SC 900, which is the Security Compliance and Identity Fundamentals exam, just like any other fundamentals exam. It's an optional exam if you are getting started in security space. This is a certification for you to start with, but by no means it's an prerequisite for any of the associate certifications. There are 3 associate certifications available under the track: SC200, SC300, and SC400. SC200 is for security operations analyst who who manages the security operations on a day-to-day basis. Identity and access administrators are people who manage the Azure Active Directory and who manage identities for the organizations. And lastly, for the administrators who manage, security engineers who manage information protection for your organization, SC400 is the way for you to go. For AI engineers, the exam number is AI 102. There was the old exam number called as AI 100, which is retired. And if you have already registered for that, you can still go for that exam till June of this year. But if you are registering going forward, go for AI 102. This exam is intended for AI engineers who consume cognitive services, machine learning services to create artificial intelligence solutions, which includes vision services, bots, language understanding, natural language processing, agents, and so on. So I have provided a link down below for the AI engineer exam. You can check out the detailed skills and detailed services covered under each of the skills measured. But if you are an AI engineer or if artificial intelligence is your interest area and you are looking to get started with that, this is an exam for you. Moving on to data scientists who might be joining this meeting now. If you are a data scientist who have been working on machine learning services, this is an exam for you. The certification can be earned by clearing an exam called as DP100. It does cover different machine learning services that Azure offers. How do you run and train your models? How do you predict or how do you uh, do predictions? How do you do regressions and whatnot? Uh, how do you deploy and consume your models? How do you optimize your models? So if you are a data scientist or if you are looking for becoming a data scientist, this is a certification path for you. Do check out the link that I have provided down below if you are interested in data scientist certification. As a data engineer, it's intended for data engineers who design, implement the management, monitoring, security, and privacy of data using the Azure Data Services. It does include the skills like you should know how to manage data storage, how different data services like SQL, like storage accounts, how do you process the data in Azure? How do you secure your data in Azure? How do you optimize your data storage and data processing? All those are covered in the certification called Azure Data Engineer Associate. As I was mentioning earlier, there used to be 2 exams, DP200, DP201, which are now merged into a new exam, DP203, which is in beta stage right now, and it is expected to go live in another month or so. A new certification which went live recently. I believe my slide says it's in beta, but I understand sometime this week the results were out and the exam has gone live now. But there is a certification track for Azure Stack Hub operators who provide cloud services to end users or customers within their own data center using Azure Stack Hub implementation. The skills that are measured in this exam include how do you implement Azure Stack Hub in your organization? How do you manage identity? How do you manage the infrastructure using Azure Stack Hub and so on? If you have been aware of this space, there used to be an exam 7537, which used to cover similar services and similar concepts. Easy 600 has replaced that exam on January 31st. You can check out the link I have provided down below for more details on this certification if this is a space you have been working on or you are interested in. So that wraps up pretty much the associate certifications that are available. Then under the expert certification path, there are a couple of certifications that you can strive for, starting with the Azure Solutions Architect Expert certification. As I was showing you in the earlier slides, there are two exams that you need to give or clear in order to earn the certification for Azure Solutions Architect. The exam numbers are 303 and 304. It's intended for architects who have expertise in most of the services in Azure. They do understand those services and they have experience in designing solutions that run on Azure. In my opinion, this particular certification is the most hard to earn, as it covers the list of the skills that are measured is the longest for this certification. It does covers length and breadth of so many services. As you can see, it does cover infrastructure services, it covers application services, it does cover identity and security, it does cover data services, it does talks about uh, designing for business continuity. It's a very big curriculum for a certification. So in my opinion, this has been the most, I would say, this is the certification which has taken the most time for me to prepare for. But if you are an architect or if you want to become an Azure architect, this is a way to go for you. Go ahead and check out this certification. I have provided a link down on this slide for the Solution Architect Expert certification. So moving on to Azure DevOps Engineer Expert. This is for the DevOps engineers who have experience with implementing uh, services like CI/CD pipelines, people who have experience in managing source control for your services, for your applications that are deployed in Azure. People who have experience in site reliability engineering is probably a good fit for this certification exam. Unlike any of the other certifications that we have talked so far, Azure DevOps Engineer Expert certification is little different as it requires you to have one of the prerequisite certifications earned, which is either Azure Administrator Associate certification or Azure Developer Associate certification. I don't mean that you cannot go and appear for AZ 400 exam before giving AZ 104 or AZ 204. You can certainly give AZ 400 exam before the other AZ 104 or 204 to earn the certification, but you will not get the certification unless you have a combination of either 104 and 400 or 204 and 400. As I was mentioning earlier, this certification does looks for skills across DevOps engineers, like they should have experience in implementing CI/CD pipelines, managing source control, preferably have site reliability engineering experience, and how to implement instrumentation or logging in your services and so on. I have provided a link down below for people who might be interested in this role. If you have been a DevOps engineer, this is a certification for you. If you are interested in this role, feel free to check it out. Last but not the least, these are some of the specialty certifications. If you are a professional who have been managing SAP workloads running in Azure for your organization or for your customers, this is a certification for you. The exam number is AZ120. If you are an IoT developer who have been developing IoT solutions by consuming Azure services, this is a certification for you. The certification number is AZ220. As I said earlier, there is a new certification for Windows Virtual Desktop administrators who manage WVDs or virtual desktops and running in Azure. The exam number is AZ140. It is still in beta. If you are one of those guys whose job has increased a lot starting with the pandemic, I think this is a good certification for you. All right, once you understand the different certifications, I think it is easier for you to identify the certification that you would like to go for. A couple of things that I recommend for people to think about is, first is your past experience. What's your past experience in? If you have been a developer, if you have been an administrator, or you have been an architect, it certainly helps you in identifying the right certification path. But even if you don't have past experience, what also matters is your future goals. What do you want to do? What do you want to be in Azure space? That can also help you in identifying the right certification for you. Once you have identified the certification that you want to go for, how do you get started? So I have provided links, as I was mentioning in all of those slides earlier, for each of those certifications. Once you will go and browse those links, for each of those exams, you will find there is a place where you can go ahead and schedule those exams. So if you are registering for a certification exam, this is the place to start with. Look out for that schedule exam yellow button in your exam page. Once you click on that and schedule it, it will ask for your basic details, like your address, your name, your country of residence, and few other personal details to have you registered. And then it will redirect you to Pearson VUE or uh, any of the other certification test provider that have a tie-up with Microsoft. I'm based out of United States. Here we have Pearson VUE. When it will take you to Pearson VUE website, it will give you different options how you would like to take the exam. You can certainly go and take the exam at a local test center. You can take it at the convenience of your home or your office, which is known as proctored exam, where there is a person who monitors you while you are giving your exam. It has certain restrictions, which you can check it out on the website if you are planning to give an exam at your home. You can also go for a Certiport test center, or if you are in a training from Microsoft, they also give you a private access code, which you can utilize and during the training to appear for your certification exams. In my history, I have always given exams either at a local test center or at the convenience of my home. So once you provide all the details and you are about to register, the last thing that shows up is the payment page. So you should be aware of how these certification exams are priced. And these are not cheap sometimes. For example, if you pull up any of these fundamental exams, each of those costs $99, 99 US dollars in US. There's a drop down on the pricing page. You can select your country and the price might vary depending on the country that you select, but it is still expensive whichever country you are in. If you are going for an associate, expert, or specialty exam, most of those exams are for $165 in US, and the likewise in your country of residence, the price might increase from fundamental to associate, expert, or specialty exams. So be aware of these pricing because these exams are not cheap. It's always important to be well prepared before you go ahead and register for these exams. If you are someone who has been impacted by COVID-19, you have lost your job, you can go and schedule any of these certification exams for 15 US dollars. Check out the link I have provided if you are one of those unfortunate people and you are looking to get skilled. This is a way for you to go and save some money for you. But if you are like me, who have been paying for these certifications, the full amount, then there are a couple of options that you can benefit from. Uh, Meaning, one of the challenges I've seen in the past is these exams are expensive if I register it for once, and if unfortunately I'm not able to clear the exam in one attempt, I lose all the money and I have to go ahead and register again with the full amount in case I have to appear for the exam again to earn it. So depending on the number of attempts that I take for each of these exams, it can really get expensive for me. And especially if I'm starting with a specific certification in which I don't have past experience, it also becomes difficult to keep paying multiple times if I'm not able to clear exam in one attempt. So what I recommend to folks is you can go ahead and look for these bundles. So there are two different bundles that you can avail. One is exam replay, one is exam replay plus practice test. Unlike the registration page that I was showing you earlier, where $99 and $165 is for a single attempt of those certification exams, under exam replay, you get 2 attempts. So you can go ahead and buy an exam replay bundle that gives you 2 attempts to take an exam. That's included in the cost. It's not $165. It is roughly around $200 to $225 is what I have seen, but it gives you 2 attempts for your exam. Do note that if you clear the exam in your first attempt, then your second attempt is wasted. You cannot utilize that second attempt for any other exam. But I think it's kind of an insurance if you are not confident that you will be able to clear the exam in first attempt and you might need a second attempt. I think exam replay bundle is a good option to save some money for yourself. And if you are also interested in buying some of the practice tests from Microsoft, Microsoft has a tie-up with MeasureUp, and some of those practice tests can itself cost $100 on top of the certification cost. You can save some of those dollars for yourself by buying exam replay and practice test bundle, which just not only give you 2 attempts to clear the exam, but it also gives you access to one authorized practice test. And again, you can save some dollars because of that bundle. Do note that whenever you buy these vouchers under these exam replay bundles, these vouchers come with a 12-month validity. So you cannot take exam beyond 12 months. So it's important always to be aware of that constraint. Now, we talked about how to register, how the exams are priced, how you can save some money for yourself. Now let's talk about the exam structure. If you have given these certification exams in the past, I'm sure you would be aware of how these work. But if you are new, uh, all these exams, certification exams, are time-bound exams ranging from 90 minutes to 210 minutes. When I say 90 to 210 minutes, it does include some extra time for your registration at the time of exam. and they do have a couple of surveys in the exam. They include that time as well, but out of that 90 and 210 minutes, you can easily say it is somewhere from 60 minutes to 180 minutes that you get for your exam. But again, it differs for each exam, so check it out on the exam page to see how much time you will get for your exam. Now, in the exam, there could be a different combination of questions that you might get. It might have multiple choice questions, which might have one or more correct answers to choose from. And each of the correct option that you choose from, you get a point for that. Then there are questions where they ask you to drag and drop code snippets. They have a code snippet towards the right, which have missing snippets, and then you have to drag and drop the right code snippets from the left to the right in your code block. Then there used to be labs included in most of these certification exams, which are currently discontinued. But if you have given in the past, or labs might be introduced in future, so always be aware of that. In those labs, Microsoft gives you 8, 9, 10, or 11 or 12 different tasks related to your certification exam, which you have to log in into Azure portal or in the Cloud Shell, or you have to execute your Azure CLI and Azure PowerShell commands to execute those tasks. The task might be to create a virtual machine or configure virtual networks or create an app service and things like that. But currently be aware that those labs are discontinued, but they can be started back again anytime soon. Then there are case study based questions as well, where Microsoft will have provide you a case study which you should read. It will give you a problem statement. It will give you the requirements, and then it will ask 3, 4, 5, or 6 questions out based on that case study, and you have to provide your solutions based on the problem statement and the requirements listed in the case study. The last one is the plain yes or no questions. There are some certain questions which just come with yes or no, but be aware of that. These are the most trickiest questions I have found so far in these certification exams. How these questions are placed is Microsoft will give you a scenario, and they will ask you, provide a solution as well, and then they will ask you whether that solution will solve the problem or not. And what happens is Microsoft will give you same problem 3 times, and they will give you three different solutions, and you have to uh, answer whether that solution will solve the problem or not. And the challenge is once you select yes or no and move to the next question, you cannot go back and change your last selection. So it becomes kind of tricky. It's very confusing sometimes because the solution is very close and probably might solve the problem, but sometimes what they are looking for is the best solution and just not any solution. So look out for those type of questions and take a second thought before you click on next and move to the next questions, because you cannot come back. And these plain yes no questions cannot be marked for review. Be aware of the review functionality in your exam. If you are giving exams, you can always mark the questions for review later before final submission. If you are not sure of the answer, but there are some questions that you cannot review before the submission at the end, so be aware of that. Now, total number of questions can differ for every exam, so there is no fixed set of number of questions that you're going to get in every exam. It might vary depending upon the exam you are appearing for. Lastly, the exams are updated regularly. There is a 2-month cycle that Microsoft follows to keep these exams up to date, and they also flush out old questions, and they do bring in new set of questions so that they can keep the exams up to date and new for everyone who is appearing for those exams. The exams are scored using an algorithm which is not known to me, but what I really can say is the minimum passing score is 700. That doesn't mean that you have to score 70%. You have to be right 70% of the questions. The algorithm doesn't considers that, but the passing score is 700 when you give exam. Microsoft considers the difficulty level of the exam as well to score. And if you score more than 700 out of 1000, they give you essentially pass the exam. Good part is there is no negative marking, so uh, don't skip any question unanswered. Always answer even if you are not 100% sure on the answer, because chances are if you get that right, it might help you in clearing the exam. Now, most of the questions have partial scoring. As I was saying, there are multiple choice questions. So meaning out of those three correct options, if you opt for two correct and one incorrect option, you can get score for two correct options. And since there is no negative marking, and nothing gets reduced from your score if you answer one of these options incorrectly. And that's why I was saying never leave those questions unanswered. Always attempt all the questions, because that increases your possibility of clearing the exam. If it's not a beta exam, if it's a live exam, you will receive the results immediately on your final submission. But if you are giving a beta exam, it might take somewhere from 1 to 2 months. We'll touch upon beta exam in the next slide. And as I was saying, the minimum passing score is 700, but there is no fixed criteria that you can guess how many number of correct questions you need to have, but it might differ based on the different exam that you might have. As I was mentioning in the earlier slide, there are new exams which are launched as beta exams. The advantage you get out of those exams is if you are one of those 300, 400 lucky candidates who register first, you can get 80% off on your exam. And as I was saying, results are not shared immediately. You have to wait probably for a month or two to get the results. And if you clear the exam, then you don't have to take the exam again, as the result is valid for 2 years. Once you earn and clear an exam, this is what you get. It will give you a detailed description of the different skills that are measured in the exam and where do you stand, whether you need to improve on, or where you have comparable skills, or where you are strong in. You can register for your certifications. You can see your certification history. You can register for new certifications under Learning Dashboard. So I have provided a link down there to check out the Learning Dashboard. This is a starting point for you when you are going to register for your certifications. Um, you can see a blue button down there called schedule next exam. You can schedule a new exam from there, or you can also go under here certification and exams section, and you can pull up the exam that you want to register for. Once you register for an exam, the appointment will start showing up under the learning dashboard under the appointment section. If you have cleared an exam, it will throw up a message here saying congratulations, you have passed that particular exam. You can also download badges, certificates, and transcripts based on your certification history. If you'll go to the badges section in the learning dashboard, all the certifications that you have earned gives you a different badge that you can share on social media, that you can share with your friends, embed in your resume. You can go under each of those exams and then share it on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. You can email it to your boss. You can link it to in your blog. You can link it, embed in your blog. You can attach in your emails. You can download that. You can share it with your friends, peers, colleagues, manager. These are validated credentials when you are sharing your badges through Acclaim, your Acclaim. There is a website called Credly, vendor called Credly, who have a website called youracclaim.com. You can link all your badges to that particular portal. Each of those badges reflect a validated credential. You can, as I said, share it on social media, embed it, download it, and share it with your peers. For every certification that you earn, you can also download a certificate for each of those that you can take a print of. You can download it as a print PDF. You can also download transcript for your certifications. You can all these certification exams that you earn, all these certifications that you earn, get tracked in your transcripts. You can email your transcripts, you can share your transcripts, you can download PDF copies of those through the learning dashboard. Now comes the interesting piece. Since you are, how do you get started with preparation? So as I was saying, identify a certification based on your role as well as your past experience. If you haven't worked with Azure before and planning for an Azure certification, get yourself an Azure subscription as the first step. Walk through the exam objectives thoroughly. As I was saying, I have provided links in each of these certification slides earlier. Download the PDFs with exam objectives and go through them thoroughly to understand what each of the certification is going to ask. Identify the study resources that you are going to use for your preparation upfront. It's important to spend some time and list down what you all need to prepare for, and then create a plan, put a target date whenever you want to appear for your certification. That will give you a target to strive for. I have a fellow MVP friend called, his name is Tim Warner. He has a blog post on how to get started with your certification. So I did picked up this image from his blog post, and I have credited his website down below there. Essentially, earning a certification requires a mix of your knowledge and understanding of the Azure concepts and how much you have practical experience. And it also requires a test taking strategy because these exams are time bound. So you should also plan for taking those exams in such a way that you don't miss out on any of the questions. Here are some of the resources that I have personally used and I always recommend. Always start with the Microsoft Azure documentation, which is a source of authority. It is always up to date. Microsoft has launched, I guess, a couple of years back, Microsoft Learn, and it has been growing on a daily basis. They have introduced certain different learning paths available for most of the certifications. It's a free resource that you can check out. Please refer to Microsoft Learn. It's a great resource for a certification preparation. You can also go for exam reference and study guides available on Amazon and other bookstores. There are people who have published study guides online on their blogs, which you can utilize. If you have Pluralsight subscription, you can go for Pluralsight as well. Pluralsight is free this month. If you are preparing for your certifications, you can certainly utilize Pluralsight. They have learning paths. I personally use Pluralsight for some of my certifications, a great resource. Likewise, if you don't have Pluralsight, but you have LinkedIn Learning, it's also another great resource. It has learning paths as well for certifications. Vis Labs is another vendor which is coming up. Well, they have lots of uh, certification material that you can utilize. They have practice tests as well as uh, video trainings that you can utilize. Skill Me Up, Opportunity, Udemy, Channel 9, YouTube, and there are many other online learning platforms that you can utilize for your learning. Let's quickly touch upon last two slides, then we'll wrap up. Here are some of the do's and don'ts based on my experience. Always check out the Microsoft exam policies and FAQs before you appear for an exam. Each exam is time bound, so be aware of that. Some of these questions might take time, so balance your time well. Mark the questions that you're not sure of for review and revisit them later. When you are preparing for your certification, it's always beneficial if you can maintain a journal of your notes. Then you can always revisit your notes before the certification exam. And just not read and learn the concept, also practice each of the concept that you are learning. That will help you in developing the understanding of the concept. And always buy practice tests which are authorized by Microsoft. Don't get tempted to buy and use brain dumps. First of all, it is illegal and it can also be cheating. And lastly, don't forget to share your digital badges with your peers and friends. Here are some of my tips. Nothing can beat your experience. So if you already have experience in Azure, you are already have an edge, but that doesn't mean you cannot go for certifications if you don't have experience. As I was saying, revise the concepts you already know very well. Have an action plan. Go through the FAQs in the Microsoft documentation. Those are great resources that you can look out for. And don't look out for shortcuts. Depending upon your speed, keep at least 4 to 6 weeks of time in your hand. Certifications had certain benefits. It can help you get hired, getting promoted. It can help you illustrate your knowledge. It can help you to learn new technologies and services out of your day-to-day project. It can help you learn, keeping you up to date with the latest technologies. And Pearson VUE has published a white paper on certifications, which claims that 23% of the certified technologies receive up to 20% salary increase. You can go ahead and read that white paper. I have provided a link down below. And with that, I know I'm over a little bit minute over time, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I hope this was helpful.